Dr. Emmanuel Manny Hostin, an orthopedic surgeon and husband of The View co-host Sonny Hostin, is accused in December lawsuit fraudulently billing insurance. By the way, this is a Daily Caller story I'm reading. The lawsuit alleges Hostin knowingly provided fraudulent medical and other healthcare services in exchange for kickbacks and or compensation. And
people have to wonder, where does Sonny Hostin get her opinions? Like you said, and it's obviously from her husband. She has to tell her what to say on The View, because without it, she's got nothing up there.
Sonny Hostin thought The View was the only place she'd face drama until her husband got caught up in a $450 million 0-cents RICO case. And suddenly, Greg Gutfeld and Bill Maher were essentially hosting a tag team roast session right on her front lawn. This wasn't just a takedown, it was a masterclass in public humiliation. But listen to this. The jokes hit harder than closing arguments, and the timing was so brutal you'd think it was scripted by HBO. How did a respected daytime host find herself at the center of a primetime scandal? What these two unleashed makes courtroom drama look like a tea party. You'll be gasp-laughing. Sonny Hostin always wanted to shine bright, but who knew her husband's side hustle involved a $450 million 0-cents RICO special? That's not just a scandal, that's a whole miniseries complete with plot twists, offshore accounts, and enough drama to warrant a second season. While Sonny was out here flexing her moral biceps on daytime TV, her husband was allegedly doing CrossFit with criminal enterprises behind the scenes, but it gets crazier. Yes, Emmanuel Hostin, loving husband, respected doctor, and now alleged mastermind of a $450 million 0-cents fraud ring. Because nothing screams, trust me, I'm a professional, like getting perp walked in designer cuffs and ruining an entire weekend's worth of Hamptons brunches. It's not every day you realize your soulmate may have accidentally wandered into the Sopranos extended universe with a LinkedIn profile to match.
Pat, you're married. Tom, you're married. If your husband's doing something, if he's allegedly doing something like this, you guys would know if your wives were up to some nefarious stuff. But let's just not forget who she is. She's been, for years, lecturing America about morality, inequality, systemic failures, and look at her track record. How many times has she had to go on in the past 2 months and look at the camera and do a legal apology for all the stuff that she said on the show?
And just when you thought this couldn't get juicier, in walks Greg Gutfeld with a grin so wide it could file its own defamation suit. You could practically see the glint in his eye. A man who's built an entire career out of mocking media hypocrisy now handed the ultimate gift-wrapped scandal. This wasn't just a win, it was the Super Bowl of smug liberal meltdowns, and Sonny Hostin had just fumbled on the 1-yard line. But that's not all. This was Sonny, the courtroom commentator, the high priestess of accountability, suddenly starring her own real-life legal drama, the kind she usually narrates with furrowed brows and righteous indignation. Gutfeld didn't even have to break a sweat. The irony was so thick, it practically wrote the punchlines for him. The woman who couldn't go 5 minutes without delivering a TED Talk on ethics was now, metaphorically, hiding under the table while her husband allegedly performed an interpretive dance around federal law. Greg turned it into comedy gold. The View doesn't just have hot topics anymore, they've got RICO representation. All that's missing are matching jumpsuits and a theme song.
So, Sonny, I bet you haven't been in a supermarket since COVID for about 3 years.
I haven't been in a supermarket since COVID. For about 3 years. That's when I discovered Instacart, and I give them a big tip because they don't always pay their people well, and it's so that's been an issue, I think, for the company. But man, you can get toiletries, you can get fire logs. You know those big Bounty towels you don't want to carry?
Those from Costco.
Somebody else goes.
Fire logs? She had to tell the audience that she tips big because even she knows she sounds insufferable. Hey, I'm an but at least I tip. This dame probably virtue signals on the toilet.
While Gutfeld came in swinging with jokes sharp enough to slice through legal briefs, Bill Maher brought the sledgehammer of sarcasm. His face lit up like someone just told him kale had been outlawed and irony was back in season. If there's one thing Marr thrives on, it's catching hypocrisy in its most glamorous form, preferably wearing high heels and overpriced hair extensions. And Sonny? She served it up on a platinum platter with a side of scandal. But it gets worse. For years, Sonny carried herself like a walking moral compass, America's self-appointed GPS, rerouting the nation every time someone dared to take a political detour off the View's approved path. Marr couldn't resist pointing out that the woman who once scolded the masses for everything from tone to timing is now allegedly dodging subpoenas with the same agility she once used to sidestep inconvenient facts. Marr's takedown was blistering. There's nothing quite like watching someone climb the moral high ground, only to swan dive into a fraud pit dug by their own spouse. And the best part? The silence. Oh, that delicious, awkward, pin drop silence from The View. The same panel that roasts public figures for misusing a comma suddenly transformed into a lineup of stunned mannequins in a courtroom diorama. Who knew selective outrage could be this selective?
And by the way, out there, that hat that you keep wearing, that red hat that says "Make America Great Again," that tells people that you go along with this. So you might as well just put a swastika on the hat.
Don't do that. Let's not do that.
Because we see it anyway.
I'm not going to defend Donald Trump ever, but I would never say that we should put the swastika on the cap, because I think you can hate Donald Trump. You can't hate everybody who likes him. It's half the country. I don't want to live in that country. I don't want to live in the country where I hate half the country, and I don't hate half the country.
How dare you disagree?
And let's be clear, we're not saying Sonny did anything illegal. But the real crime here? The monumental hypocrisy. Because while she spent the better part of a decade perfecting her impression of a Supreme Court justice trapped in a daytime TV host's body, she somehow missed the fact that her husband was allegedly out here rehearsing scenes from Ocean's 11 Medical Edition. It gets crazier. You almost have to admire the multitasking. Emmanuel Hostin wasn't just allegedly dabbling in some low-level tax evasion. Oh no. According to reports, this was a full-course buffet of white-collar crime. Shell companies, fake medical billing, kickbacks, questionable real estate, and possibly a private island or two thrown in for good measure. At this point, no one's quite sure if this was a criminal operation or a Netflix pitch gone rogue. It takes a special kind of ambition to turn a surgical practice into an episode of Narcos Manhattan Edition. And the public reaction? Equal parts shock, schadenfreude, and popcorn. Because nothing fuels the internet faster than a moral crusader tripping over their own soapbox while their spouse allegedly builds a financial empire on billing errors and backdoor deals.
Only about 31% of Americans trust our healthcare system. We have a terrible healthcare system. And, you know, doctors suffer because of big corporations as well. Doctors that want to do good, like my husband, you know, operates on someone even though they don't have insurance and then has to sue health insurance companies to get paid for the work that he's been trained his whole life to do.
And I thought Will Smith wouldn't let a black man finish. If her IQ was half as high as her smugness, she'd be Einstein.
Let's just say Twitter had a full-blown meltdown, like a stroke followed by uncontrollable laughter. Hashtags were trending at light speed, memes were multiplying like rabbits. One especially viral masterpiece showed Sonny with the caption, "You are the company you keep," and apparently the RICO charges too. But listen to this. Sonny did his best to keep it together, trying to stay cool under pressure. But the internet? It doesn't forget, it doesn't forgive, and it definitely doesn't miss.
It's called The View. It's not called The Facts.
Yeah, but
It's
isn't it interesting that it's called, I mean, I don't think they meant this when Barbara Walters invented it a long time ago, but it's The View.
Well,
that's the problem in America.
But
there is one view,
right, and
one
that's clearly
true opinion, and everybody else can go sit in the corner.
That's correct. I think that's not actually.
And then there's the baffling silence from Sonny herself. No press statement, no cryptic subtweets, not even a dramatic sigh. For someone who once claimed that silence is complicity, she sure found the mute button fast. But it gets worse. If the audience isn't clueless, they remember every finger-pointing monologue, every self-righteous tirade, every time Sonny took the moral high ground on transparency, responsibility, and justice. Now, they're watching her dodge accountability like she's Neo in a legal matrix. Her credibility? Absolutely kneecapped. By the very virtue she built her brand on, being above the mess. Oops. And as the memes keep multiplying, it's becoming clear she won't be able to ride this one out. Gutfeld keeps twisting the knife in his monologues, dubbing The View the new headquarters of organized daytime crime. Bill Maher, ever the cynic, has already declared this the ultimate proof that performative morality always ends with a court date.
Illusions, not even a dramatic sigh.
I want to talk about Whoopi Goldberg because I got so many texts this week because she attacked me the week before.
Sure.
So she was, everybody was like, oh, Bill, I get you're enjoying the karma. First of all, I'm going to talk about this at the end of my show next week, teaser. But there is no fucking thing as karma, okay? Get over that. Whoopi attacks me on a regular basis. She says stupid shit on a regular basis. They just happen to coincide. But can I just...
Let's take a moment to appreciate the divine comedy unfolding here. Sonny built her empire on a foundation of moral superiority, righteous monologues, scathing critiques, and that ever-present air of being just a little more enlightened than everyone else. And now, she's got a front row seat to legal inferiority. This isn't just irony, it's karma with a sense of humor and a federal warrant. The glow of the stage lights has dimmed, replaced by the cold flash of courtroom cameras. That righteous halo she wore so proudly, it's flickering under the heat of cross-examination. But listen to this. While Gutfeld and Marr were busy dry cleaning the last remnants of her public dignity, The View suddenly came down with a mysterious case of collective laryngitis. You could practically hear the crickets tuning their tiny violins as the women who usually wield outrage like a Marvel superpower transformed overnight into a cast from a silent film. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we present The View Reacts or Pretends It Didn't Happen. Spoiler alert, it's the second one. It's been days, and Sonny Hostin hasn't so much as blinked twice in Morse code about her husband's alleged $450 million 0-cents RICO buffet. This from the same woman who once looked personally offended when someone mispronounced empathy. Now, she's in full stealth mode. No flinching, no wincing, not even a misplaced breath, just calmly sipping from her mug as if the hot tea inside wasn't boiling over straight into her real life.
But that's only because they keep talking. Those hens are always clucking. They get to say stupid stuff for an hour every day, and then I get to say stupid stuff for an hour every day, except on purpose. But every now and then, one of those dingbats inadvertently says something that reveals modern liberal thought so perfectly, it deserves further study. You know, like a weird serpent that washed up on the beach and you want to poke it with a stick.
Let's not forget, this is the same panel of pearl-clutching philosophers who once spent 3 whole segments dissecting someone's cousin's ex-boyfriend's traffic ticket. Remember when they dragged a political aide because his uncle's dog walker had unpaid parking fines in a swing state? Yeah. Back then, no offense was too small, no connection too distant, and no moral soapbox too high to climb. But it gets crazier. Now, that same moral high ground has mysteriously turned into a swampy ditch paved with, let's move on. Clips are resurfacing like wildfire, Whoopi wailing about integrity, Joy waxing poetic about accountability, and Sonny herself practically foaming at the mouth when someone's neighbor so much as winked at a Ponzi scheme. And now, complete radio silence. It's as if someone activated the invisibility cloak of ethics. The selective morality is so thick you could spread it on a bagel and still have enough left over to cater brunch for the whole studio audience. Naturally, the viewers noticed. Social media isn't a place for mercy. It's a raging beast with unlimited Wi-Fi and a talent for receipts. Comment sections weren't tea parties. They were digital riots in Yelp review format. People are calling out the hypocrisy like they're auctioning off integrity to the highest bidder. Funny how the panel had time to analyze Ben Affleck's Dunkin' order for 3 days straight, but can't spare 10 seconds for a $450 million 0-cents fraud case happening in their own backyard. And let's be honest, if this were Meghan McCain's husband caught up in even $450 0-cents worth of unpaid parking meters, the ladies of The View would have turned that table into a public tribunal. Meghan would have been fitted with a scarlet letter before the first commercial break. But Sonny's husband allegedly pirouetting through a RICO minefield, that gets the masterclass in This Is Fine energy. But speaking of RICO mines, just how bad is it really?
I'm old enough to remember when it was the conservatives who hated the Jews.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bill Maher, who has been the standard bearer for liberalism and in many ways leftism until the woke went bananas in this last decade, but for decades, that's what this guy has represented in America. I want you to note the tone they all talk with him. I want you to look at Sonny Hostin's body language. and the way they look at him and everything else, just because he is a lefty who hasn't gone completely bananas.
Let's take a brief pause from the satire and step back to appreciate just how deep this fraud rabbit hole might actually go. Because we're not talking about someone fudging a lunch receipt or rounding up on a mileage report. No, this is the full-blown criminal buffet served with a side of, you're under arrest. We're talking fake billing schemes so elaborate they'd make Enron break out a nervous sweat. Forged financial documents that might as well have "please investigate me" stamped in bold across the top. Offshore accounts allegedly humming the national anthem of the Cayman Islands. According to prosecutors, Sonny Hostin, Sonny's husband, a respected surgeon by day and it seems a part-time financial illusionist by night, was allegedly entangled in a massive fraud operation. The scam? A twisted spider web of shell companies, falsified invoices, and manipulated insurance systems. Toss in some corporate loopholes and apparently just the right amount of collective gullibility, and you've got yourself a scheme that allegedly siphoned off hundreds of millions of dollars. Money that vanished faster than a Kardashian's first marriage. Well, listen to this. If the charges stick, Emmanuel isn't just looking at a slap on the wrist or a stern warning. He's staring down the barrel of serious federal time. Years, not months. And let's just say the accommodations won't include room service or a spa menu. Now, to be clear, Sonny isn't legally implicated, at least not at this point. But let's not kid ourselves. Public opinion doesn't operate on due process or wait for subpoenas. It moves fast, fueled by suspicion and Wi-Fi. People are already side-eyeing her like she's hosting Thanksgiving dinner with Bernie Madoff and asking the hard-hitting questions. Did she know? Was she benefiting? Was that Louis Vuitton bag purchased with allegedly creative coins? The Twitterverse has gone full true crime mode. Conspiracy boards, red string, thumbtacks, and all. The court of public opinion is in session. And right now, Sonny's reputation is being cross-examined with no objection in sight.
Might go.
I think that women, white women in particular, want to protect the patriarchy here because it's to their benefit. Yeah. They want to make sure that their husbands do well. They want to make sure that their sons do well. They want to make sure that their children do well. And they want to make sure that they do well. Most of the women in some of these studies are married white women, and they do fall in line with what their husbands are doing.
People have to wonder, where does Sonny Hostin get her opinions?
Yeah.
Like you said, it's obviously from her husband. She has to tell her what to say on The View, because without it, she's got nothing up there. She's not very bright.
The court of public opinion is officially in session, and let's just say the jury is petty, caffeinated, and armed with Wi-Fi receipts. This isn't just one woman's PR nightmare spiraling out of control. No, this is about an entire brand teetering on a tightrope made of hypocrisy, double standards, and the kind of selectively enforced ethics that would make a politician blush. When someone else's skeletons come tumbling out, bring out the bones, fire up the outrage, and cue the dramatic piano music. But when the closet in question belongs to one of their own, suddenly it's let's respect privacy, and now's not the time. Translation, it's mine week. Well, it gets crazier. Tune into The View tomorrow for an in-depth discussion on which celebrity's dog had a problematic dream, but still not one syllable about a $450 million 0-cents alleged organized fraud operation involving one of the host's husbands, because who has time for federal indictments when there are lip gloss scandals to debate and zodiac signs to analyze? The silence isn't just loud, it's deafening. And the longer it lasts, the more it echoes.
Did you watch the whole thing or just the parts that I sent you?
I watched it. Obviously, just the parts that you said. Did I watch a whole episode of The View?
No woman can do that unless you're stupid. But
I have a job.
Here's the thing. How can they call themselves progressives when they keep saying that nothing has progressed? Then it's on them.
The term woke has been, in my view, co-opted by the right and weaponized and bastardized. And so I was surprised to hear you use the term because historically, as you know, because I think you're quite brilliant, that woke is a word used by the black community to note that we must be aware of social injustices.
But words migrate.
So why is that a bad thing?
It's not a bad thing, and originally that was absolutely a great thing. Alert to injustice, who's not for that? But words do migrate. Now, I'll use any term you want. because maybe that is a word that's triggering, and so let's not use that word. I don't know, want to call it the...
Now that we've sniffed this scandal from every possible angle and uncovered more layers than an onion in therapy, it's time to zoom in on how Greg Gutfeld and Bill Maher took this absurdity, gift-wrapped it in sarcasm, and sent it, express delivery, to the Hall of Public Shame. Gutfeld, never one to miss a chance to throw gasoline on mainstream credibility, dubbed The View the daytime drama division of RICO & Co. Meanwhile, Marr, with his signature smirk and cynicism, called the whole thing a TED Talk on why performative virtue is a bad investment. The takedowns weren't just brutal, they were surgical, and the internet ate it up. But listen to this. Amid the roasting, a deeper question is quietly smoldering beneath the viral clips and late-night punchlines. Will Sonny be held to the same standard she spent years holding others to? Spoiler alert, probably not. This is the same woman who built a reputation demanding accountability, transparency, and justice like they were moral currency. And now, she's swimming in that same accountability pool, only instead of doing laps, she's floating on a raft labeled no comment. Sonny has become the embodiment of controlled silence, eyes fixed forward, mouth zipped tighter than a prosecutor's briefcase. Every episode of The View has morphed into a masterclass in avoidance. Topics shift away from even a whisper of scandal, with the elegance of a magician performing sleight of hand. 1 second, it's fiery political outrage. The next, it's a heartfelt segment on how to make vegan cupcakes for your rescue dog's birthday. The contrast is blinding, the irony blistering. And the silence, well, it's saying a whole lot more than she is.
Hostin's obsession with race gets thrown back in her face. Today's video comes to us from Sonny Hostin. Sounds like a town. We're in Sonny Hostin. She was on PBS's Finding Your Roots, a show dedicated to researching celebrity ancestry. For context, Sonny is a staunch supporter of reparations and has made a fortune spewing nonsense about white privilege and racial justice. Well, turns out she's not as oppressed as she claims she is. She's actually the descendant of slave owners from Europe.
Marr took one final jab, likening the whole fiasco to a Greek tragedy. Except, as he put it, with more Botox and better lighting. He painted Sonny as the tragic heroine brought down not by the whims of fate, but by the slow burn of arrogance disguised as virtue. And honestly, he's not wrong. When your entire persona is built on the premise that you're smarter, better, and more morally evolved than everyone else, it becomes a real problem when your personal life comes crashing down like a Jenga tower made of lawsuits and denial. It gets juicier. As for Gutfeld, let's just say he's enjoying himself far more than journalistic integrity probably allows. Every punchline is delivered with the glee of a kid who got to bring fireworks to a book report. And while the audience laughs, Sonny is left learning a brutal lesson in real time. When you build your throne on judgment, don't act surprised when the floor gives way beneath you. Gutfeld and Marr didn't just roast Sonny Hostin, they performed a full-blown comedic exorcism. They stripped away the righteous facade with surgical precision, exposing the uncomfortable truth that public virtue often comes with a private price tag. And in doing so, they reminded us all of one timeless, tweet-worthy truth: preach less, duck subpoenas more.